What's changed from the original Model Y to the Juniper? Let's find out.
In today's video, I'll be comparing the two Model Ys, the original, which is the white one behind me, that's a 2021, as well as the new refreshed Juniper, which is the 2026 model that just came out. Now, this comparison will be strictly on a owner's perspective. I won't just read you a bunch of specs you could find your own online. I'll kind of just show you the obvious differences I see, both inside and out, as well as some minor ones to do with performance. Here we go. So I'll start with the more obvious part, which is the exterior. So the headlights on the Model Y are separate like most cars out there on the market, but the Juniper has them all the way across the front, which is a lot more similar to how the Cybertruck will do it. And right here next to the headlight, you'll notice there's a more elongated pass-through of wind. I believe that's to help efficiency and help it kind of like hug the car to get better mileage. But this one here on the Juniper is a lot more elongated, more up and down, a lot more room to pass through. You compare that style over here on the old style. It does have a pass-through, but it's pretty small. It's not near as elongated or exaggerated here as the Juniper. And then I'm not sure how much this matters, but the little tow hook here is on the passenger side of the Juniper, whereas it's on the driver's side of the old Y. The next difference you'll notice is up here at the wipers. If you'll notice here on the Junipers, the two middles tuck way into the center, almost like a point, and they tuck way down like 3 or 4 inches into the car. Here from the front, you can barely see them. In fact, you can see a little bit stand out here on this side, with this side, but they're totally gone there in the middle, which again, is supposed to help efficiency, less air drag. Here on the Y, you see the entire blade here of the driver's side, and just a little bit here of the outside, but from the side, you do notice they do stick up higher a lot more into the windshield than the Junipers that are tucked in. So the last difference up here on the front, you'll see some of that difference between the radar and the LiDAR, the just vision of like smart cameras. So if you'll notice on the old Model Y, you don't have any kind of camera up front. Your only camera is going to be up there on the windshield. But instead, you have these little circular sensors. These little sensors are some kind of LiDAR that they're sensing waves that are bouncing off the car and back at you. Well, if you notice, the Juniper has none of those, no circles here. But what they do have is the camera. So this camera is what the full self-driving and autopilot's going to use as compared to the LiDAR, which opens up a whole nother debate for a different day if you just prefer the smart cameras or some kind of combination of radar or LiDAR. But again, another topic for another day. Next, moving on to the rear view mirrors. Now, the two mirrors operate the exact same.
The only difference at all is just aesthetics. The Juniper here has the little line with a little bump out on top, whereas the original style is just smooth all the way around, but they operate the same.
Now, along the side of the car is nearly identical. In fact, I think it indeed might be identical.
In fact, if I had to guess, I think the doors and the handles are the exact same to one another.
It's here on the backs that you'll see a few more differences, mainly in the trunk, but the trunk shape. The older Model Y has the little lines that go down diagonally on each end of the trunk, like so. Whereas the Juniper trunk lines are going to go down almost totally straight with maybe a little bit less of a diagonal.
Here's that side-by-side comparison from the rear angle.
The bigger difference lies in, again, the light and the little plastic moldings that run all the way across, compared to no moldings on the old style and the lights that are separate.
Again, the direct side-by-side comparison, notice the difference.
Now, I have heard one of the benefits of the new Juniper compared to the old is specifically to do with insurance and cost to repair on this back trunk. So the old Model Y here, the white, was just all one piece. So if you had any damage from anywhere up on this, the whole entire thing had to be replaced. Whereas over here on the Juniper, this bottom piece here is totally separate. It's a totally different piece than this top piece. It's become very common for people to get into rear end collisions, and they have damage here to the lower portion of their vehicle, but they still had to replace this entire thing because it was all one piece. Now you won't necessarily have to do that, which will cut insurance costs down, hypothetically, because it's going to cost repair costs to go lower. Now, my old style Model Y, the white one here, was a 3-row SUV, whereas my new Juniper, of course, they only offer that in a 2-row, so they won't compare directly, but nonetheless, we'll pop them up and see what they look like. So the old Model Y, the handle button's gonna be right here, just to the left of the camera, and the camera is slightly off-centered here in the old style. If you press that, it's gonna open up like so. Whereas the Juniper camera is right in the middle, but the button's in the same spot. It's going to open up itself like so. So back at the original Model Y, it's not going to be a straight comparison because, again, I do have the 3rd row with the 2 seats in the back here. One difference is the little back ledge here. Now, this is a lip that can go up or it can actually reverse.
And when turned upside down, it kind of stands up level with the seat and has a little ramp there on the end. Now, when you open it up down below, this storage is about the same.
Here in the Juniper, you just have the flat back, no optional way. And again, I don't have the 2 seats here, so it's just storage. Now, if I lift this up, you're going to see the storage down below. I have a few more contours down below here than I did in the old style, but I'll give you here side by side.
Original on the right, Juniper on the left.
Now, because I don't have a third row, I do have extra storage here for really smaller, thinner items down here below that I wouldn't on the other side. The middle seat configuration seems to be the exact same. You have a middle handle and 3 separate compartments. In the new style Juniper, again, handle in the middle with 3 separate seats.
And with the 2 trunks open, you can see that, again, the Juniper is a little bit more boxy, a little bit more square piece of glass in the back.
Next, I'll bring it inside to see the differences there. All right, so now let's talk interior differences. Let's start with the small things. Although this is small, this is a big difference for me personally. The screen's right there in the middle. That's the same. That hasn't changed. We'll talk about that more in a minute. You also still have your 2 wireless charging stations down below. Now, this was an addition from the older styles like S and X. They added the wireless charging, which is nice. However, look at it from here. This would be my eye line of sight. So I can see down, but I can't see what would be the top 3 or 4 inches, if not maybe as almost as half of a large phone. Now here's my line of sight from the Juniper. I can see almost the entire wireless charging pad, which is a plus because if I had my phone that I was trying just to read at a glance, and I know you're not supposed to read your phone while you're driving, I could see my entire phone, or at least 95% of it, from my seated position. You could tell they put a little bit more thought into that.
Back on the original, it of course has the same round steering wheel, and you have the same left stalk. The left stalk, of course, does the turn signal still, but that's where the similarities end.
Here in the Juniper, you still do have the stalk here on the left, but you no longer have the wipers. The wipers are here now on the steering wheel, a simple 1 press. Here on the original became what was an early trademark of Tesla, as all the shifting was done here on the stock. With your foot on the brake, you could go down into drive, up into reverse, and you would just push on the end to go into park. Well, none of that is the same here in the Juniper. There is no stock. So all your shifting is done, again, with your foot on the brake, up here on the main screen. You'll slide the little animation up into drive to be in drive, and you'll slide it in reverse to be in reverse. And if your foot's on the brake, you can just tap and go back into park. And speaking of the Cybertruck we just mentioned, it also has a little bit of a feel here. As what I mean by that is you have kind of like a velvet, almost kind of like a felt little texture here, very similar to what the Cybertruck would be. And as we're walking back over to the Y, let me say subscribe to the channel, please, because in a future video, I'll do some comparisons from what the Juniper, I feel like, adapted from the Cybertruck and some of its design. You'll want to see that. So here in the original, you can see it's all a hard texture. In fact, you have this little wood grain, which is very nice. I don't dislike this at all. It's just a different style. Also here on the main screen, just a slight difference, is my map is always on here unless I have a menu, then of course the menu would be up. But I just have this little kind of like a little home icon to open and shut doors here on this half of the screen. Whereas over here on the Juniper, your entire screen is taken up by the car when it's on the screen, and not until you put your foot on the brake
and slide it into gear is your screen split with the map.
But everything else, including the visors and the lights, literally are very identical, if not the exact same. Everything up here seems to be the exact same.
No big difference in the glove box either.
Our next difference is going to be here in the little console cup holder and then an additional console holder here. So here in the original, you have the cup holder that's always open. You have this section up here, which is again just a big open section. That's still pretty similar, but then there's nothing else back here except for the flip up portion of the console. It's going to look like that. Here in the Juniper, you'll notice a little bit more futuristic looking style. So these are all covered. So I can slide this back and expose the cup holders. That's a slight change. The other one, then I can also slide this open. It's actually a deeper console into here than it was the old style. Of course, these can push and shut back. Then you have a very similar console tray. In fact, I think the console itself is probably the same piece. You just have your storage down in there. Again, it's very comparable to the original Y. Here in the back seat, again, here in the original, it's all about the same. Not a whole lot of big difference, except for the one difference, which actually, if you have kids like me, is really a huge difference. And that's here in the center area. I have no screen or display here on the original, just the one up there in the front. Whereas here in the backseat of the Juniper, I have a screen. The rear screen does have the entertainment system, so your kids can watch Netflix, Hulu, YouTube, stuff like that.
You can also control the airflow, which again is nice as your kids start to get older. It's like the fronts, you can drag this airflow up and down, move these all around. Pretty cool little feature that you can do this now here on the back. And while the buttons on the door have not changed a lot, the textures have. There's now multiple different textures. I had the vinyl up top, kind of like a cloth, almost like a really nice wallpaper here down below. Then this felt vinyl kind of section below. Again, kind of reminds me of another vehicle. In fact, it has the feeling of kind of like what the Lucid Air has done. At least that's what's here on my launch model. The original Y has just the two textures with the vinyl up top and the felt style down below. Everything I can tell, the seats are about the same, again, if not the exact same.
In fact, the only differences I noticed at all to the seat were the seat backs of the first row from the second, is you just have this little pouch here in the old style Y. Here in the Juniper, you just have a flat rail with elastic on the side, so you're pulling it back like this. Again, to me, not a huge deal because I'm going to put seat covers on both the front and the back seats, which, by the way, I'll do those in a future video. Now let's take a look at the two Frunks. Now, to my disappointment, neither one of these were made automated. I think that is one thing they're lacking. Many of the other cars like the S or even other models like the Lucid or Rivian will fully open and fully shut with the touch of a button, whereas here on the Y, both the old style and the Juniper, they just pop the trunk like a typical old trunk release would on a combustion car. All right, so with that hood popped, I'm just going to pop it open. There's what we got inside. And then here, the original style. Again, as you can see, very similar. Juniper on the left, the original on the right. The only difference at all of note, which is really not of any consequence, is where you add washer fluid to the car. It's way back up high by the windshield in the original, and it's up front here in the Juniper. But not too big of a deal, no matter how you look at it. There's also a few more areas of like a fabric or a felt here on the Juniper. Inside the back row, you'll see this entire section here is all like a carpet kind of deal, and even with inside the door, all carpet. Now I think that's nicer for a lot of people. However, me with a bunch of children, as you can see, you've only had it for a couple weeks and already got crumbs and Legos everywhere. I kind of preferred that hard, but I think for a lot of people, that's going to be an upgrade. This is here on the original. So if you notice, here's what I'm saying, you do have more of like this plastic part back here, and you have a little bit of a plastic down here and also up the sides. And inside the door, again, this is all plastic, whereas that is like that kind of like a felt carpet like this, but much more extensive in the Juniper. Now, to me, the performance of the two is very similar, but even the difference is it's hard for me to compare because I have the acceleration boost here on the Launch series, whereas the original is just the original stock of what it comes with, so that's not really a true comparison. The full self-driving is very similar, but why wouldn't it be? It's just better on the Juniper because, again, I've got a 5.5-year newer vehicle. So it is a little bit smoother, accelerates smoother, brakes smoother. It does a little bit better job of seeing things on the road. Very similar, but it definitely has the edge there. Now, if you're familiar with these two models, let me know, am I missing something? Is there a difference that I didn't point out in this video that I should have? Let me know down in the comments below. I'd love the feedback. Maybe we can push it into a future video. Speaking of future videos, make sure to subscribe to the channel because you're going to want to see what else I have to offer, including a whole bunch of accessories going into the Juniper. See you in the next one. I'll leave you with this last panning view of the original, the Juniper, one more time, the Juniper and the original. Thanks for watching.